Greetings everyone, welcome to my channel, Music is a Journey. I'm Peter. Today is just an on-the-spot video because, as I mentioned in my previous video about Judas Priest, I did actually get Jugulator here just last weekend, and I've had a chance to listen to it twice now. As well, Demolition also came in the door yesterday, so I've listened to it all the way through once, plus I got through most of it on my way home. I think it was just the last few songs I didn't get to listen to. I really wanted to share my impressions of these two albums while they are still fresh, so to speak. But first, I just want to say I picked these up used, and Jugulator I picked off, I don't remember if it was the Mercari flea market, I think, where I was able to pay using my points. So I didn't actually lose any cash for this, but this came out in great shape. I mean, there's barely any markings on the jewel case. The paper stuff inside is ever so slightly wavy, which might actually be from being in this room because it was rainy a lot the last few days here. Anyway, great shape. Now, Demolition, the picture that was online, I couldn't really see so clearly about the condition of the paperwork. The CD is fine, but I'm really shocked by, okay, here's some stickers that came along with it. I was really shocked to see the paperwork that comes along in here. I don't know, what do you call this? Like with a cassette, it's called a J card. What do you call this with a CD here? I don't know what this is made out of. This is some kind of like really weird glossy type paper, and this, I don't know if you can see it here, but this looks like this guy kept this in his shower. Like not actually under running water, but just in a very steamy, humid room. I mean, it's just so wavy from exposure to water, but also this paper feels like really high gloss. Even the little, like this is the Japanese edition, so it comes with a little booklet inside, and even that, I don't know how well that shows up there, but even that is really wavy. So that was the one disappointing thing, because I really hate it when the little booklet inside is in such bad condition. But this is really the lowest, or one of the lowest ranked Judas Priest albums, so I figured, well, anyway, I'm not likely to go out and try to hunt for a better version. And even if I do, if it's a question of the paperwork, it might end up looking like this anyway after a few years of the seasons changing here. Anyway, what I want to do is to give my impressions, and I've scribbled out a whole bunch of notes today. So the first thing I want to say is I've been listening to Judas Priest since 1983 when I got Screaming for Vengeance, and until this week I had never heard even a bit of a song with Ripper Owens, except last weekend when I watched a ranking video where the host of the channel was including short live clips, and he included a couple of short live clips of Ripper Owens singing these songs here anyway, and I just thought, it actually might be worth checking out because it doesn't sound so bad. Now, the general voice, the opinion that I hear out there on the internet is that there's absolutely nothing wrong with Tim Ripper Owens' vocals. They always say he does a great job and he can scream like Rob Halford, and all that's fine, but people are generally disappointed with these albums, especially this one. And just today, I just thought, let me do a quick check of a few lists of rankings. And just so you know, Jugulator, what did I check? I checked 7 lists. Out of the 19 albums, the 7 lists I checked rated this one at 16, 15, 13, 17, 17, 8, and 18. And Demolition fared a lot worse. It came out as 19, 19, 18, 19, 19, 18, and 7. One person gave this a very fair review. Now then, going into it, so of course, as I said, I got Jugulator first. I ordered them both on the same day, basically, but one of them, actually, the auction had to finish up, so it took a couple of days before it was officially mine, and then it took another few days to reach me. This one here, I ordered it, I don't know, it was like a Friday night, and by Sunday it was in my mailbox, so that was cool. So this is the first one I had the impression to check out. I think actually what I want to say is a few comments about what happened leading up to this album. So of course we know, Painkiller went out, They did the tour for it. And after the tour had wrapped up, Rob Halford was living in Arizona at the time. I think the rest of the band were all over in the UK. I'm not sure about Scott Travis, but anyway, KK Downing, Glenn Tipton, and Ian Hill, as far as I know, they were living in the UK. Certainly they weren't living in Arizona. And Rob Halford just felt really tired out, exhausted from the whole, record and tour type of thing. So rather than have a band meeting or contact the band directly, Rob told his lawyer that he wanted to take some time off. Perhaps it was worded take some time off from the band or just take some time off. And he thought, okay, let the lawyers handle it. Well, according to what he wrote in his book Confessions, his lawyer then told the band's lawyer over in the UK, Rob is taking time off from the band, or somehow that got communicated as Rob is leaving the band. And then the lawyer told the rest of the band, well, Rob says he's leaving the band, which made everybody go, what the hell? Well, that's crazy. But if that's what he wants to do, and then the lawyers immediately set to work on the paperwork to legally remove Rob Halford from the band. And by the time this news got back to Rob, he was like, I didn't say I wanted to leave the band. Well, you're officially out now. Sign here. I was like, what the hell? So that's what he said in Confessions. But I would think, somewhere along the way, isn't there a way to stop that process? Like, just a moment here. That's not what I meant. Let's not do this. So I kind of get the feeling that he wasn't really totally averse to leaving the band. But anyway, so what happened? He goes off. He does Fight. He does 2. And he does a couple of albums under his name, Halford. The rest of the band, anyway, while he's gone, are like, okay, now what do we do? Now, according to the Wikipedia article, it says that they immediately started looking for a replacement. But if you figure he left in 1992, then immediately finding a replacement took 5 years. 5 years from 92 before this came out in 97? I don't think so. Now, I do actually have, well, it's probably on the shelf over there, have a book on the history of Judas Priest, unauthorized biography. I probably should have checked it out, but I'm doing this because this is my impression from today, listening to Demolition. So anyway, I think possibly the band said, okay, maybe Rob just needs some time off. He wants to do some solo work or work with some other people and he'll come back again. Or it's possible that they just said, well, okay, well, we'll take a bit of a break. And I think Glenn Tipton around this time started doing some work with Cozy Powell and John Entwistle. So anyway, whatever it was, they did eventually decide, well, we do want to keep the band going. It looks like Rob's not coming back. Whatever, however it went, I don't remember. And then they started looking for new singers. And the funny thing is, reading the article on Wikipedia, they said it was Devin Townsend was one of the people considered, which I thought was really strange because about 9 years ago, I really got into Devin Townsend. I bought almost everything I could of his on CD. And I read a lot of stuff about Devin. I did not read anywhere that he auditioned for Judas Priest or he was being considered for Judas Priest. So they finally settle on Tim Ripper Owens because, he sings an amazing job of the Ripper. And that's where he gets his nickname, Ripper. So he comes in. He's actually named Ripper. On the band photos and the credits inside, he's named Ripper. So there we go. Tim Ripper Owens. He's Ripper. And they record Jugulator. Now, this is where I'm going to start getting into this here. So I got this last weekend, as I said, and I listened to it during the week. I've had a chance to listen to it all the way through twice. As well, I have also listened to Angel of Retribution all the way through and listened to side 1 a second time. I have listened to 5 picks from the last 3 albums. Again, my previous video was about the last 3 Judas Priest albums, so I still have them all on my phone to listen to. I listen to music mostly during my commute, in case you're wondering, which is about 3 hours plus, every day. So, to and from work. So I've got a lot of listening time. Anyway, I listened to some stuff from Screaming for Vengeance. I listened to something from Sin After Sin. I listened to the Turbo Lover song because I like that one. So I listened to a fair bit of other Judas Priest anyway during this past week here. Jugulator. So I'm going into this thinking fans typically don't like the Ripper Owens albums, and Jugulator tends to do better than Demolition in almost all cases, as I read out not that long ago. One person called this Painkiller 2. Anyway, so I started listening to it, and one of the first things that I noticed was that they've got all these little sound effects or these spoken lines, like one song, this telephone ringing and someone answers, "Death Row." And they have like spoken words, and it just sounds really comic bookish to me. Like there's one song opens with these screeching car tires, and then what sounds like a really low budget recording of a crash of something that was then dubbed to cassette and then used for whatever. Anyway, all these spoken lines, the snarling dog, the screeching car tires, and so on. It just feels like, is this supposed to be an answer to Queensryche's Operation Mindcrime, just done in a really comic book like fashion? I don't know what's going on here. Ripper's voice sounds great. He opens up with the Rob Halford type scream, and he does use it in a few places during the album. He does that very well. But one thing I noticed is that the music just sounds heavier and meaner. Like the old Judas Priest, they would have these real speed burners, and you would have this image of somebody with just a lot of strength and power, just traveling at high speeds, maybe on a motorcycle, I don't know, whatever. Exciter, these kinds of things, the painkiller and all this. This doesn't feel like that. This feels more just like an Incredible Hulk type figure, just standing with muscles just all bulging out and a really mean look on the face and steam rising off the body. And you feel like this guy's about to smash. So that's the difference I noticed right away there. And I did read that they actually down-tuned the instruments. Also, of course, the vocal style of Ripper is different. He can do the high notes, but his regular vocal style is certainly different. And we get a lot of this kind of, I guess it's his voice, double, triple tracked, but as a kind of gang vocal style, but really in a gruff, mean, angry, shouting way in the background. So there feels to be like a lot more aggression in here. Now, one thing I read that Glenn Tipton said was, you have to remember, like people ask, what a big stylistic change from Painkiller to this. Why is that? And like he said, there are 2 albums missing. Had Judas Priest just continued recording by their usual type of schedule, they probably would have released an album in 93 and another one in 95 before arriving at this one here. So one thing you can say is that as the 90s progressed and the style of heavy music progressed through the 90s, Judas Priest may have actually been, missing a couple of albums, like they said, and then jumped on later on after the sounds had already changed a lot, and they jumped on to keep up with those sounds. So we lost a bit of the evolution of Judas Priest. Some of that evolution was just never recorded, or even, maybe no songs were even written. So anyway, that is one thing. We're jumping from 1990 to 1997. And then, of course, we've got Ripper on vocals, so different vocal style. And another comment was, people said that these Ripper Owens albums are not very melodic compared to older Judas Priest albums. And Glenn Tipton's response was, we were not feeling very melodic. And just generally speaking, as I said, these albums just feel darker and heavier and a Hulk about to smash kind of a feeling to it, rather than tearing up a storm on a motorcycle, with metal feathers or anything like that. So that was my impression, and I thought, okay, it's not terribly bad, but it really doesn't feel like Judas Priest. And I suppose in a way it's a good thing they changed the logo, because it just gives a feeling like this is a different Judas Priest from what you grew up with in the 70s and 80s. Fair enough. New vocalist. Bands change vocalists all the time, and generally their sound requires some adjustment to accommodate the abilities of the new vocalist. Van Halen managed to do it rather successfully with Sammy Hagar. Deep Purple did it in the 70s, changing from Ian Gillan to David Coverdale. But we also see other bands struggling. I mean, when Ronnie Dio stepped in for Black Sabbath, he wasn't exactly welcomed by everyone, even though he went on to become a legend in his own way. So anyway, we are looking at replacing Rob Halford, one of the big legends of heavy metal. How do you do that? Well, you get a guy who sounds like he can sing, at least scream like Rob Halford, but, he does have his own vocal style, and it feels like there's some adjusting going on here. My impression is anyway. So I didn't have very high expectations for this one here. I just thought, well, I'm just going to listen to it. I mean, if it sounds somewhat as good as this, then that's okay. But a lot of people complain just that there's too many experimentations in style or sound, and it just really doesn't sound like Judas Priest like a Judas Priest album. That is generally the comment. In fact, one of the brief review comments in one of the rankings I checked online just said, like, this album made it obvious that a reunion with Rob Halford was the only way the band could go forward. So anyway, I plugged this in this morning, and it starts off with, Machine Man. And there's some, effects, some like building music at the beginning. And then the song comes in on its own. And I didn't have all these kind of critical, nitpicky thoughts like I did with this one. The song just started playing and I just got into the groove. The next song, One on One, that one too, I just kind of went with the groove of it. There were some really cool guitar riffs, great guitar tone. And as I was listening to it for the second time tonight, I thought, why did I just feel really comfortable listening to Demolition? Why did it feel like I was just listening to a heavy metal album and it was all good? Whereas with Jugulator, I was like, well, they're doing this, and they're sounding like this, and he's doing this. I don't know if it's possibly because Jugulator just kind of set the stage, so now it was normal to hear Ripper on vocals, whereas here it was like, okay, let's check this guy out. Maybe that was it. But as I listen to it also, I just feel like the band feels more comfortable with their lineup now. And that kind of makes sense because here they're breaking in new shoes. Here, they've already been walking in them for 4 years. So my impression after hearing this twice and this once and a half today is just that this album feels more like the new lineup of Judas Priest with Ripper on vocals, and they're moving on to their next album, and they're much more comfortable with writing. Now, of course, here, almost everything was written by Glenn Tipton and KK Downing. Here, it's mostly Glenn Tipton. I think Ripper is credited for writing a couple of songs. Certainly, I heard it mentioned that Jekyll and Hyde is a typical Ripper song. And I think even Scott Travers is credited for writing one of the songs on here. Also, we have keyboards on here with Don Airey. Before you freak out about keyboards on a Judas Priest album, remember that Don Airey played keyboards on Painkiller as well. So that's pretty cool. So in a way, this actually reminds me of the Voivod period where Snake left the band and they did 2 albums, well, 2 albums and an EP, but they did 2 albums with the new vocalist who was also taking over on bass. His nickname in the band was E-Force. I think it was Eric Forrester. Anyway, they changed their sound, and the first album, Negatron, that Voivod recorded with E-Force, it has a new sound, a new feel. He's got that more close to screamo type vocal style. But the second album, Phobos, that actually remains one of my favorite Voivod albums. It feels like they really grew. Like Negatron was breaking in those new shoes, but Phobos, the shoes are comfortable. We are okay to walk in them. And that's kind of like after this, cursory listen only twice a few days ago and once and a half today. That's just my general impression that this feels more like the shoes are broken in. The band is comfortable in moving around, trying new things, but still also keeping heavy. And it just makes me wonder, like, if they had continued like this, if Rob hadn't rejoined the band, what would a third album have sounded like? Would they have continued with Ripper on vocals? Or would there only have been these 2 albums and then maybe he would have left or the band would have asked him to leave? Who knows, right? I mean, I don't know how their relationships were, but I mean, they're working on these 2. So, it's possible this could have been the Judas Priest for the new millennium, or maybe they would have switched to a third singer, hopefully much more successfully than Van Halen was when they switched to a third singer. But anyway, that's not what happened. Whatever the reason, just Rob Halford had to come back. And that was the same thing with Voivod, with whatever the reason, Snake just had to come back. And hey, Iron Maiden went through the same thing. Bruce Dickinson's away for 2 albums, and after 2 albums, Bruce Dickinson's got to come back. So I don't know what it was that was going on there in the 90s. There's at least 3 bands like that where they did 2 albums without their regular vocalist, and then the regular guy came back again. I think I covered just about everything that I wrote down this afternoon. So I guess just one of the things that I wanted to say was there are a couple of songs that I picked out here. Machine Man. A lot of people pick out Machine Man as a good song. One person ranking this album said Machine Man was the only good song on the album. I actually found One on One, as I said, was good. Hell is Home starts off acoustically but alternates between heavy guitars and acoustic, and it's all right. Jekyll and Hyde, the only thing I didn't like about it is that there is some keyboard behind the guitars in the mix at the beginning, and it has a sound like a trumpet. That's what I'm hearing anyway, and I really don't like keyboards, synthesizers that are played in place of a real instrument, like they have a trumpet sound or a violin sound or a flute sound. I would prefer to hear just a real instrument. Do I want to hear trumpets on a Judas Priest album? Probably not. Close to You, it was all right, but then I found Devil Digger. The first time I listened to this, I took I had it on my phone, right? I took it out and thought, what is this song? This is pretty cool. Devil Digger is pretty cool. Bloodsuckers is also pretty good. In Between, that was the last one I heard when I came home tonight, so I heard it for the second time, was also quite good. And I just remember the rest of the album. The only thing, there were two songs, one of them, Lost and Found. The beginning part really sounds like one of those late 80s glam metal power ballads where it's just all acoustic and gentle singing at first, and this doesn't switch into the actual power ballad part. I don't know. It's probably the one track that the very first time I heard it and it came on, I thought, I feel like skipping this. And then there's Metal Messiah, which is the 13th track, and I don't think it's rap, but it's got this kind of a groove vocal style to it. Like, I don't know. Maybe I was kind of okay with it, but just normally I might not be. I don't know. It means I could either get used to it and think it's actually a pretty good song, or I might quickly tire of it. And What's My Name is a bonus track on here. I'm thinking next week what I want to do is listen to both of these albums again. I want to finish listening to this one all the way through for a second time, and then I want to listen to them back to back and see what I think. Here's the thing. It could be that these two albums grow on me. I might find more things I like about them, or it could also be that I kind of tire of them after listening to them 3 or 4 times and think, maybe they're not as good as I thought. I don't know. But as far as thinking about them as Judas Priest albums, well, basically we don't have a choice. I mean, they are. It is Judas Priest, just with a different singer, and that is not because they asked Rob to leave. He just decided he needed time off, and then some lawyers buggered it up, if the story Rob told is to be believed. Which I wouldn't be surprised. Lawyers are like, hey, this is exciting, let's do stuff and make money. So for me, thinking about the Judas Priest catalog, if I want to consider it like right from Rock-a-Rolla all the way up to Invincible Shield, yeah, I have to include these. I watched the Sea of Tranquility ranking of the Judas Priest albums. Pete Pardo excluded these. And he just gave his kind of reasons, which were almost the same reasons that I had for not owning these in the first place. But I think it's because, like with, for example, another one of my favorite bands is Deep Purple, and I tend to think of the first 3 albums, the Mark I period, as a separate period. I tend to listen to those albums together, or if I mix the songs up, I listen to them together. I usually will not mix like a song from Book of Taliesin together with a song from Machine Head, for example. And then again, it's kind of just easier to compartmentalize Deep Purple's discography. We have the Mark II, and then we have the Mark III and IV. 3 and 4 I'm kind of okay to put together, although 4 could be a standalone album. You know, we have the Mark II Revival with Perfect Strangers, House of Blue Light, and Battle Rages on Masters and Slaves kind of goes off on its own. And then after that, I just kind of break it up mentally, like how I feel. The last 4 albums, all produced with Bob Ezrin, feel like they belong together as a set, even though we only have Steve Morse on 3 of them. So I do the same with Judas Priest. I can separate like the Gull Records period from the 70s, from the early 80s to, you know, Turbo and Ram It Down period, and then Painkiller on its own, and then these 2 albums coming together, and then Angel of Retribution, and the last 3 albums. Nostradamus is just out there on its own, and you know, Nostradamus and this one, they compete for the lowest ranked Judas Priest album. If this is in 18th position, Nostradamus is in 19th. If this is in 19th, Nostradamus is usually in 18th. Anyway, I think that is enough babbling. I just really wanted to record these impressions while they were still fresh in my mind. Listening to them again later, again, who knows, I might be more excited about them. I might like them better. I might not. So that's it. Enough rambling. This was not the video I wanted to record this weekend, so I'll get on to doing that maybe tomorrow or the day after. Okay, do leave your opinions below. Do these albums suck? Do you hate them? Do you think Ripper ruined the band for 2 albums, like I read somebody said on the internet? Or, you know, do you actually like some of them? Are there songs that you like? Are they okay? How do you think about them? I'd love to read your comments. Thank you so much for watching this rather long video. We'll see you around for another one a little bit later on. Bye, folks.